Working on music with someone else can be really rewarding, a situation where the sum can be much greater than the individual parts. But, there are times when even the most in sync partners can lock horns and butt heads. Well, on today's episode, I sit down and chat with Tracey and Vance Marino, authors of Hey, That's My Song, a guide to getting music placements in film, TV, and media, who are not only musical collaborators, but also happen to be married. And we discuss their experiences in navigating the co-writing process and how they make sure their relationship doesn't suffer in the crucible of creativity. Also, as longtime members of both the Production Music Association and Taxi, we chat about the upcoming PMA conference and Taxi Road Rally, the differences between the two, and how you can best maximize your conference experience if you're planning on making the trip to LA this fall. Plus, we're going to take a listen to a jazzy lounge cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by you, a member of the 52 Cues community, and this week, we're going to be taking a listen to Daiquiris and Filberts, which is a jazzy lounge cue written by Smaron, so you definitely want to stick around for that. But if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you found me, however you found me. I know you have a lot of choices out there in podcasts and YouTube, so I thank you for spending part of your day here with me. I also want to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything here going. We are 100% community supported, so you're not going to hear any ads for meal plans, earbuds, or phone apps. But if you want to learn about how you can help support 52 Cues and also unlock perks like live streams, workshops, cue feedback, Zoom sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description, or, stick around, because we're going to be talking a lot more about that a little bit later in today's episode. So I had the pleasure of meeting Tracey and Vance Marino at a PMA Zoom mixer. They do. I think once a month or so, the Production Music Association puts on a Zoom session where we all get together and we have little breakout rooms, and it's just kind of a mixer, coffee hour, I think is what they call it. And I met them, and they are longtime Taxi members, longtime PMA members. They're authors, collaborators, co-writers. They're also married. And so I really resonated with their story because I do a lot of collaboration with my wife, Shannon, who, if you like the graphics and everything here at 52 Cues, that is all her. And she's also a musician. She's been on the podcast a few times. But I really, really wanted to talk about the collaboration process and talk to folks who have been there, who are in the middle of doing it. And so here is my recent interview with Tracey and Vance. But before we start, I do want to make a quick note and apologize for the video quality on my side. There were some technical issues with our streaming service, and I've cleaned it up the best I could. It's going to sound great. So if you're listening to the podcast, then it's going to sound great, but the video is kind of low res and blocky, so I know what's up with that. Hopefully we have ironed it out for the future. But without further ado, here is my interview with authors and collaborators and composers, Tracey and Vance Marino. I am so excited to welcome to the podcast Tracey and Vance Marino, authors of Hey, That's My Song, with the exclamation point. And so when you see the title, you have to embrace, Hey, That's My Song, a book all about getting your music placed. It's a guide for getting music placements in film, TV, and media. So excited. Tracey and Vance, welcome to the 52 Cues podcast.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having us. We're really honored to be here.
So good to see you. And you remind me a lot of me and Shannon, my wife Shannon, aka Mrs. 52 Cues, because like me and Shannon, you are a married couple working in business together, working in music business together. And one of the things that I knew I immediately wanted to talk to you about was, if you're anything like me and Shannon, you probably have some sandpaper moments, right? Where maybe some creative differences kind of butt up against each other. And I just wanted to ask, how do you approach that? Working with so closely with somebody who you have a relationship with, how do you manage overcoming creative differences and all the things that could arise in being in business together?
Oh, very carefully. No, it took us a long time to learn to work with each other. Really, it took years, and we were married and started writing together, and it was total frustration, meltdowns, absolute creative differences right away. We didn't understand it because we had been gigging together for many years. So when we got a studio, we thought, what's going on? And I think what it all boiled down to was Vance is more of an editor. I'm more of a blank pager. So what that means is I like starting from nothing, creating, and I'd start to play something on the piano and he'd go, oh, change that. What'd you do? And I don't know. I don't remember. It was just creative shutdown right there. So what helped was getting my own Pro Tools set up in my own studio. And then I could create something. It could be messy. It could be just an idea. And then I'd bounce it off of him. He'd come into my studio, say, oh, maybe if you change it, then it was cool. So it was a process we had to learn.
Yeah. And I think when we started, I had been playing in cover bands for a long time, dabbled with writing, but didn't really understand it. So when I met Tracey and she had been writing music for quite a while, we had to kind of learn the process by reading, going to events and workshops and discovering that a lot of professional songwriters, composers, they have the two separate processes. There's the creative, just spew and throw paint on the canvas. And then the editing part where you say, okay, well, this is good, but let's change this. And so I know that there are some people who on their own, they divide it up into two processes. But what we have found is when it comes to writing instrumental pieces of music, that the process works better for us separately. I'll start some ideas. It's not really my strength, but I can do that. And then I'll go ahead and edit mine, run some ideas past Tracey. But really our best stuff comes from Tracey starting an idea on her own. And then when she's done with it, when she feels like, okay, this is something that is workable, she'll hand it over to me and I take it into my studio and I will edit it, change it, run it by her and say, what did you have in mind here? Am I going down a rabbit hole? What's happening? And most of the time, I think 9 times out of 10, she'll say, that's exactly what I had heard in my mind, but didn't really, didn't know how to make it happen. So that's the way it is with writing instrumentals. But we found when we're writing songs, when we're writing lyrics, we do that together. We do that better together. So we had to, as Tracey said, we had to learn how to work together, which is sometimes working together means working apart and then coming together. And sometimes it's actually working together from the beginning of the process.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Dave. It's really different for us writing lyrics and music or songs instead of instrumentals, because that, for some reason, we kind of feed off each other's energy. So we go into my studio and I have a Mac set up and I have a PC and we work off of Google Drive or Google Docs and just kind of get up the idea, fleshed out. And then sometimes we work with collaborators and they give us really rough choruses. And that's a whole different process. We really like working together and then going in and crafting the song. It's a lot of work. We'll spend 2 hours on one line or trying to find the perfect word. That's part of the frustration, but the joy when you find that works.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned kind of the two parts of the brain. I dabble in being an author, like writing a novel or whatever. And so I've really studied the writing process and I've carried over that idea into my music creation process, where authors will just, get your words down and then edit later. Don't even worry about typos. Don't worry about punctuation. The idea is to remain in that creative flow state. because it is a different part of the brain. Editing is different than creating. And so just like you, I find those different processes need to be separated by time, but I think it's really great that you have separated not just by time, but also by roles, which leads me to the thought that I had with working with Shannon, specifically with 52 Qs. And it sounds like you do this a little bit as well, which is when we were trying to occupy the same creative space, that's where the friction happened, because we're both very accomplished musicians. We're both very educated musicians, and we are both very headstrong musicians. And so it wasn't iron sharpening iron as much as it was iron clanging against iron. But once we found our own lanes, I'm going to do this chunk. She's going to do this chunk. Then things started working in concert together. Do you find that? Is that kind of the relationship that you have, kind of sticking to your own lanes? And if so, does that also carry over into the songwriting process? And how do those different lanes kind of jive with the lyrics and all that?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely the secret, is finding your lane, what you're strong at doing and what is not so great. I'm not a great mixer because I can't hear, and part of my right ear I lost from playing in a rock band long time ago. So I don't hear certain frequencies, but Vance can. Now I can hear frequencies that he can't tell in certain areas of the house or around the studio or whatever. It's kind of weird, but that's my lane. I'll hear something through the walls and go, wow, that is just not working. Take that out. Turn it down or whatever. But it's a very strange thing. Or I'll hear a guitar out of tune or something through the wall, which is really funny. So it is finding your strengths, and
we've had to be really honest with ourselves and put egos aside. And I obviously I know we're focusing on the creative process, but just in order to get a piece of music written, get it recorded, get it mixed, and then pitching it, and then doing the paperwork that comes along with that, and of metadata, all that stuff. There are so many different parts of the process that we've had to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, well, I think that Tracey does this better than I do. I think maybe I could. I've had more experience with this other part of the process, or because neither one of us knew how to mix. I had to figure that out. Fortunately, there's a bunch of
don't we all?
Information that's yeah, just a little part of the process. But yeah, just putting the egos aside and just being realistic about which one of us does it make more sense to do this part of the process. Tracey actually has a degree in journalism, so she's much better with words than I am. So she does the keywords and the metadata and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I actually, dirty little secret, flunked my 12th grade English class because I would ditch every day thinking I would just show up and take the test and get an A. And my teacher said, nope, sorry, flunk. Vance flunked 10th grade English.
For whatever reason, I was in 10th grade, I was in an honors English class. I don't know what I was doing there. I flunked that and had to do summer school. So here you have two English class flunkies who wrote a book.
Yeah, I saw the AP. Yeah, I saw the AP honor English heading at me like a train, and I noped out of that. I'm like, nope, I do not want any part of reading a book a week. Nope. So,
we love English now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting. You wrote a book. I'm talking about reading a book and everything. I'm sure Mrs. Samuels from the 7th grade would really appreciate to get an update. If she's still alive, maybe I'll call her or something. But yeah, the ego. It's really interesting that you mentioned the ego, because as soon as you start talking collaboration, especially if you're talking about collaboration with someone you have relationships, not just, stranger in San Antonio, you met on the internet or whatever, but this is somebody that you have to live with, that you care that their ego doesn't get shredded in the creative process. Because it's really easy, to just say, the music comes first and, it's just show business. Don't take it personally. But so much of the creative process is inherently personal. So how do you navigate that? How do you navigate when maybe you have these creative differences, and how do you make sure that ego doesn't get in the way? And how do you present criticism without, completely leaving somebody in a pulpy mess on the other side of it?
Well, we've always, from the beginning, right when we met, we realized we we had a tendency to have complementary skill sets. I'm a guitar player. I can play most instruments with strings, or at least fake it well enough and edit the living daylights out of it. Tracey's an excellent keyboard player. So right away, and this is the interesting thing. I dabbled with the piano, and I met Tracey, and I stopped playing. I need a keyboard part player. Hey, sweetie, can you come in here and record this for me, please? And Tracey used to play the guitar, but she doesn't play anymore. So we've just kind of put that aside and just decided to rely on the strength of the other person. And all throughout, we've at every step of the process, we've had to say, okay, well, I'll try and come up with the melody, but I know Tracey's a better melody writer than I am. So even if I'm working on a little instrumental thing, I'll try to come up with something in my crafty kind of way, and then I'll run it by Tracey to see what she thinks, and she'll say, just change this note here, or that works the way it is, or whatever. But I trust her on that. That is her strength. I'm a guitar player, so I'm more comfortable with chords, and so Tracey will sometimes defer to me on that. So we've just kind of accepted our lanes without really. I mean, not saying we don't butt heads, but we usually, the other part of the answer is that we don't usually let personal things enter into the music process. If we're having a debate about, who didn't put the laundry in the hamper, or whatever those types of disagreements may be, that does not enter into the creative music process.
Yeah, you can't.
Like,
go ahead.
You just can't let the ego take over. And that actually took a long time for us to both deal with, because it's not about who's right. It's about what's better for the song and the instrumental. And that takes a while. And it's still hard sometimes when I'll write something and Vance will say, oh, no, I don't know if that's good. And let's change this. And at first I'll say, kind of get a little huffy. But then I think, oh, no, yeah, that is right. And less now. It gets better. It's maturity, which we're still finding.
Well, married for 25 years. So,
but we get asked this a lot by people who are with a partner, maybe not even necessarily married, but they just say, I'd love to write with my partner. How do I do it?
Right.
And we say, well, first of all, you have a couple of hours, it's going to be some major therapy here, because you have to figure out what you're trying to do. And if someone has a different creative vision than the other person, that is almost going to be impossible. But one suggestion and a little tip here is to maybe write down all your strengths or what you like to do. I love to play piano. I love to arrange. I like to produce. I don't like doing this, and I can't mix very well. Do that. Have the other person do their strengths and maybe the things they're not so strong at or don't like to do, and then compare notes. And that sounds so simple, but it really does save some grief. It's like, I didn't think I'd be doing spreadsheets, and there's one company, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to fill out their spreadsheets. And it's very complicated. And if you put one thing wrong on there, boom, it's not going to look good. And they check every single thing. And I don't like doing that, but Vance hates doing that. So you have to find who likes something and who has a lesser likeness for it.
Who hates this less? Well, I think,
exactly.
I think collaboration really is kind of the unspoken strength, especially as production music composers. We get in our mindset, it's a solitary lifestyle. We're not playing in a band. We're not, working with orchestrators and arrangers and copyists, and we're not conducting an orchestra. And so much of what we do is in the box. We're sitting here with our sample libraries, and we get this idea that we have to do it all. And I keep saying we get this idea. I'm pointing to myself. I get this idea that I have to be all things to all people, whether it's coming up with the melody all the way to deliverables and stems and spreadsheets and metadata. But I think that collaboration really is kind of the unspoken secret to unlocking, not just good quality, but if you're wanting a heavy output, divide and conquer, split the workload so that, if you have only 4 hours, don't spend all 4 hours on one cue, because if you could give 2 hours to one cue and 2 hours to another cue, then the same 4 hours yields 2 pieces of music instead of one. And so I also think, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, that you have to kind of understand why you're wanting to collaborate. Like if you're thinking, okay, I need to collaborate, understand why. Is there something in your skill set that you want to either outsource or you need to bring someone along? Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Totally. I totally agree with that. That's very true. It also brings a different creative element depending on who you're working with. We love to work with artists on songs, and they come up with some amazing stuff that we would never ever think of. And they have interesting twists on phrasing or singing a word and kind of mangling it, and it sounds really cool. And we would not have done that. So it does bring a different creative element when you're collaborating. And a lot of people do teams. They're doing duos and trios. A long time ago, there was a Matrix. They were putting out amazing songs. And I think there still are teams, especially in songwriting, because you see so many on the credits. And sometimes it can be complicated too. We've worked with people who are MIA. They drop off the face of the earth and you go, wait a minute, we have a deadline coming up and you're not finishing this song. So that can be really frustrating too. Collaboration's great, but when it goes south, it can be career ruining, really, or almost.
Yeah. And for us, everything is a collaboration. There are some tracks that we do, some songs or instrumentals that we do, just the two of us together. That's a collaboration. And it's not always, I don't know that it's ever exactly 50-50. If it's some heavy metal guitar stuff, then I'm doing that. If it's piano solo stuff, Tracy's definitely going to do that. But it's funny, we don't really think of it as a collaboration. We split everything 50-50, regardless of who put in more effort or more time. But for us, that's, when you bring up collaboration, we don't always think of what we do together as collaboration. We think of collaboration, as Tracy said, when we work with an artist, a singer-songwriter who has the beginnings of an idea, the beginnings of a song, and they'll send that to us, and then we'll do our part, which is we like to think of ourselves as the song finishers, because a lot of writers will write the first verse and maybe a chorus or a title, and they don't know where to go. Well, that's where I love to start.
Yeah, one of the things that I know that I like to do that I that shows up when I give feedback videos and everything is taking a cue and looking at the structure and saying, okay, I would double up the octave here, I would do this, I would layer this, edit point here. And so I completely see what you're saying. But then that begs the question, let's say a listener is there wanting and thinking, hey, this is a thing that I do really well, and this is a thing I don't do really well. How do you start that ball rolling? Do you just go onto the internet and scream in all caps, I do this thing? Or how would you recommend a composer out there looking to collaborate? How would they get that ball rolling?
Well, you can do that, but
People do.
It can be kind of dangerous. But, I think one of the best ways is to go to events, and it can be online, ideally in person, and go where the fish go. We always say that, and we say that in the book as well, because you have to find people that are like-minded. If you go to a CPA convention, you probably won't find a really good collaborator. Maybe to do your taxes,
or to fill out the metadata, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd pay someone for that.
Or to count the royalties.
Yeah,
that's right. So, and we have an organization we go to. It has a bunch of music attorneys and music CPAs, and it's really interesting. But we have found collaborators there as well. So it's kind of funny that I say that now and think about it. But it is trying to find people who, and that way you can get to know people and just show up, keep showing up, join an organization or two or three. We're members of a lot of them because, first of all, we like to learn, but we like to find friends and collaborators. We don't actually go pursuing them so much now. I think we did before. And believe me, you have to kiss a lot of frogs in the beginning. You're going to have some really bad collaborations.
Yeah.
And some will go south, and that's just the reality of it. And we have a friend who's been working with another friend for 30 years, and a collaboration went south, and he would never have guessed that. He said, "Oh, this guy's great." So you never know when someone is going to have a problem come up, or they're just going to burn out or something.
Yeah.
It's always
we're talking general, right now because we were placed in a breakout group at the Production Music Association Zoom meeting. I'm like, hey, I would love to talk to those. So while we're not necessarily creatively collaborating, the relationship started because of that virtual event. I'm sorry, Vance. I didn't mean
In
to
general, we
interrupt
don't.
you.
That's
Oh, for
okay.
sure.
In general, we usually do not work with people we don't know. The idea of just meeting somebody for the first time and saying, "Hey, let's collaborate." And I know that happens out there. There are certainly organizations and events where that happens. But even when we are involved in those, I'm most happy when we end up working with somebody that we know who happen to go to the same event. But because we need to know their personality. Most importantly, are they professional? Are they serious about this? Or is this just kind of a part-time hobby thing? We prefer working with like-minded professionals. But getting back to your pairing up with strengths and weaknesses, what we find is that you can ask somebody, what is your strength? They might say melodies are my strength, and it turns out their melodies are not their strength, but they're really good with lyrics, and they didn't think they were very good lyricists. So we like events where you actually get to talk to people, socialize with them, but also get to hear their music and get to and not just a piece of music they wrote 6 years ago. We prefer the events where monthly events where there's a new song, the latest song that they've written and that they're still working on, and they want feedback on it. That actually we found to be really helpful just to assess someone's abilities, as they very well may assess ours, but also just to see what their progress is.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've talked
it.
about PMA, the Production Music Association, but I also wanted to talk about Taxi, because I know Taxi has been integral into your success because, according to your book, that was where you really found like, oh, hey, light bulb moment at it was a Taxi Road Rally. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. I had been a member since it started pretty much. The president came down to San Diego where we're located, and he gave a pitch at one of the songwriters meetings, and I signed up right away. But it was frustrating because I was writing songs at the time, and they weren't really like hit songs. They were production songs and I didn't even know it. So I kept pitching them, and they'd say, well, you need a little bit more furniture. This is for a hit country songwriter. And I go, well, okay, whatever. And then one Taxi rally, our first one we went to, it was kind of small, and it was overwhelming. And we basically just stood there and stared at each other, and we were really shy, so we didn't know what to do. And then we went again, and that time we heard a composer, we heard his demo reel, and we thought, oh my gosh, we love writing this kind of stuff. It was circus music and fast-paced chase music. And I thought, oh, this is what I want to do. We both knew that right away. And it turned out going there, they had people connected to TV productions and shows. And that's how we got our start. We were starting to write for talk shows and things like that. So it was a big break for us.
Yeah, part of the problem for Tracy early on was that before we had met and she was a Taxi member, it was difficult for her to submit to the listings because she would have to go pay to go to a studio to record whatever her ideas were because she didn't have her own. So we realized that after going to our first and actually second Taxi rally, we realized we need to have the ability to record ourselves. And so we put down the money for our first Pro Tools studio. And then there again, this is early 2000s, so no YouTube tutorial videos, and not a lot of information on the internet about how to mix, how to record. So, in fact, we learned a lot by going to the Taxi rally and
the classes
and attending the classes and workshops. But once we figured that out, and I think it took a good year before we felt comfortable with it, we started submitting to Taxi listings. The beauty of that is that there were two things. There was a target. So there was a listing that Taxi had, and so you knew what it was. And you could say to yourself, we said to ourselves, do we know how to do this? Yes, we know how to do this. Do we know how to do this genre? No, but we think we can figure it out. And sometimes we did and were successful, and sometimes we were not. And there are other genres we realized that this isn't our thing. But just to know that there are a bunch of different targets, a bunch of different styles of music that you can write. And then the important part of it was the deadline. You had to write a Caribbean Q in 3 weeks. And so we didn't know how to do that at first, but we figured it out. And it just at the beginning It's about how long it took. It would take us about 3 weeks to write one instrumental.
One instrumental.
But then that was while we were honing our process. I think we've sped that up quite a bit.
And it's really helpful now because they run the listings and they put in reference songs and tracks that we didn't have back then. And like Vance said, there wasn't YouTube really strong. It was just starting. And you couldn't find anything that would try and convey what they're trying to look for. And it's really important to have those. So they usually give 2, 3, 4 reference tracks that really help. So it's been very integral in our career. We've met so many collaborators and co-writers through Taxi since then, and they've been wonderful to work with. It's a really great resource for people just trying to figure out what to do. It's kind of like going to junior college where you go, I don't know, there's so much I could take, oceanography or chemistry. You're not maybe ready for the big leagues yet, like PMC, the Production Music Conference, because that has an audience that's a little smaller and they're really serious, and they're going to be really nerdy talking about great stuff and like mixing and all that and the latest sample libraries. We're into that. But going to Taxi, it's more making friendships and finding out what people do. It's usually, 1,000 to 2,000, maybe 3,000 people at the height. You have a lot of fish.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because I know, you mentioned you've been to nearly every Taxi Road Rally and you've been to every PMA, Production Music Association conference. Would you say that the PMA conference is more... Is the Road Rally more educationally minded and more composer friendly? And if you had to choose one or the other for where you are now versus where you were then, would you choose? Let's say you could only go to one. Thoughts on that?
That's a loaded question.
I know. I'm not making any friends.
Well, I'd go to the PMC and Vance will go to the Taxi Rally.
There you go.
And then next year I'll go to the Taxi
you compare
Rally.
Notes on the other
PMC.
side.
How's that? Exactly. That's the beauty of having a collaborator. But I see what you're saying, because there are different levels, and not that it's a level thing. It's just a focus thing. PMC is very focused. We actually got asked by the board, a couple of the board members, before they even started it. They said, because we would go to the PMA meetings, even though they didn't have a composer membership, and they'd say, hey, you guys are always around here. Like, what are you doing here? But since you're here, what would you think about if we had some kind of convention? And Vance and I went, yeah, do it. And they did it the next year. They put it together, and it's quite a thing, because it's all composers and songwriters there too, but it's all focused on sync.
But comparing and contrasting the two organizations and their events, the Taxi Road Rally is focused very much on education. It's focused very much on socializing and networking, getting to meet other like-minded people, which is it's an amazing group. I know I've heard from other people in other places where there's a musician community in a certain city, and all the bands are out to get each other and try to cheat each other out of gigs, and that whole mentality just never made its way to the Road Rally. There's something about Michael Lasko and the way I think his spirit runs through that event, and the people, the malcontents, that they realize pretty quickly that they don't fit in. The people that do choose to stick around, it's a big family reunion, because there are people, certainly from Southern California like us, but people from other parts of the country, people from outside of the country who go there, and we all know each other. And basically that November rally kind of ends up being a big family reunion to see how's everybody doing, how are the kids doing, all that stuff. But the PMC, the Production Music Conference, it has a more professional, I think, like Tracey said, more of a college feel to it. I think that that's one way to think of it. But the Taxi Rally does have people that you can meet, and we have met people there and signed deals. The Production Music Conference, it's specifically production music libraries, and if you've done your research, you know who they are, what they do, and you can actually meet them, and they're not hiding.
Yeah,
there's some conferences, not so much Taxi, but there are some other conferences where the people that you want to talk to, they're up on stage and then they disappear. Well, at the PMC, they're around.
Yeah, they're accessible, and they have roundtables. So you literally can go sit and chat with them about anything. And I don't know how many times we've walked away with a deal from there, but every single time, at least a deal or 2 or 3 for huge projects, which was great.
Now, one of the differences too, though, with the PMC, in addition to, because it's interesting, when we first heard of the PMC was in a PMA rather, before they started the conference, was in 2009. And at the time, they just had library members. Composers could not be members. But they have evolved a lot. So now that they acknowledge that, okay, well, we have library members and we have composer members. When you go to their conference, they typically have two tracks of workshops. There are the workshops that are for the libraries about foreign sub-publishers and, just the things that they need to focus on. And then they have a composer songwriter track where they're focusing on the creative side of it. And that's where the divide and conquer thing works for us very well too, because we want to know about both of those things. So typically, Tracey and I will split up. She'll go to one, and I'll go to the other, and then we'll compare notes. Because it's good for composers and songwriters to know about what are the priorities, what are the concerns for publishers and production music libraries, just to understand what they're looking for, how we can be better partners with them. I know that there was a deal that we signed early on with a production music library where we only got 25% of the licensing fees. I'm thinking we should be getting half. Why are they taking the other 75%? We later realized that, they deal with sub-publishers who take half. So then our library split half with us, leaving us with a quarter. When you understand their model and how they work, then it makes it easier.
There's
for
nothing
us
sinister happening. It's just, it's just business. So we have the PMA conference coming up at the end of this month. We have Road Rally at the beginning of next month. And the beginning of September, end of September is PMA, and the beginning of November is the Taxi Road Rally. So I am going to PMA personally. Hope to see you. Let's grab a coffee, in person. Being in the same airspace. And Michael has asked me to come and speak at Taxi, and I'm working out the details. 2 trips from Orlando to LA in 2 months. That might be a little tough. I wish I lived in San Diego. I grew up in San Diego, and my dad was a Marine and all that stuff. I'm a big Padres and Chargers fan. Woo!
Wow.
But I'm going to try to make it to Taxi. What would be your suggestions for somebody going to PMA? Like how would a composer, how should they prepare to go to PMA, and how should the composer prepare to go to Taxi? And are those different? And any suggestions for somebody going for their first time?
Oh, great questions, because it is overwhelming for both of them to go the first time. But a lot of it is people fear that they don't have credits. That doesn't really matter anywhere you go. If you don't have credits, you're still welcome. You will still come away with knowledge. You will still meet people. Most of it, we talk about networking in our book because it's so important. And that was such a scary word, networking, but it just means making friends. That's really the kind of nice, genteel way to put it. And I think it's just be friendly, be open. Put away your phone if you can. And, of course, you have to look at the app sometimes at the PMC, which is Production Music Conference by the PMA, Production Music Association, just so everyone knows that. But it's more about making relationships, creating relationships at the PMC, and getting to know people. It's not about bringing an armload of CDs and throwing them at people, although that can be okay, but that's kind of old school. You can just get some business cards with maybe a QR code on there is helpful, and just share information. Be open to all the networking events. Just no matter how shy you are, if you're shy, come sit with us, because we're the shyest 2 people in the world, and we had to get over it. And it was really hard for us, but we always like to make people feel welcome. Find the person who looks like they're miserable and just really don't want to talk to anybody, and go up and say hi and introduce yourself. That we literally have friends for life because we did that at certain and all conventions. We try to reach out because it is scary. And once you realize, no, it's not that scary, you have a friend. And we do. I have lifelong friends from doing that.
We've always prepared, no matter what conference we're going to, even if it's just a single day event, a single meeting, a dinner, a lunch, or a weekend conference. We look at the schedule and we see who's going to be there. And if there's anything that we can, listen to the way I'm going to word this, anything that we can help them with, as opposed to what can they do for us? Because ideally, I mean, the ideal partners are the people where you can help them, they can help you. Be familiar with so and so is going to be on a panel who is the owner or works at a production music library, and we'll then go to their website and look at what kind of music they have, how much music they have, what their credits are. Be realistic and honest about what you can provide for them that will help them. Because if you see that, they keep getting placements on this show that uses this kind of music that I do very well, then you can approach them with that. But just knowing who's going to be there and then having kind of a game plan about if you get an opportunity to talk to them and try to create one. Because the typical scenario is that there's somebody you want to talk to, they're on a panel. The panel finishes and they get mobbed. I don't know that a lot of effective relationships have been started that way. Sometimes they have, but typically it's when you see them at the elevator or you see them sitting in a lobby by themselves, or just see them pass them in the hallway. Just sometimes just stop them and say, "Hey, nice, you did a really good job on that panel. I like the way you talked about this, and I learned something from what you said." Be complimentary to them. Just treat them like a person, and then. Ideal is to get them to ask you about you and what you do and what kind of music you do, as opposed to, "Hi, Mr. Music Library person, listen to my music." That's going to turn them off very quickly. So just that's one of the ways that we prepare, is knowing, first of all, who's going to be there because they're on a schedule. And then we also like to think, okay, well, if this person's on the stage, they're likely to attract these kinds of people. We typically there's a music supervisor conference put on by the Guild of Music Supervisors. And that is a path. You can try to get your music signed and placed directly through a music supervisor, but that's not the way it happens most of the time. Who shows up at a music supervisor event are the production music libraries, the publishers, those folks, and they're not on stage. They're sitting next to you in the seats. That's happened so many times.
Yeah. It's a good way to do it.
And is for the Taxi Road Rally, is it still armload of CDs? Is that still, or have we finally moved away from the CD? Because when I looked at going, I think it was 4 years ago, everybody was saying, bring CDs. Tell me that's gone away. Tell me CDs are passé.
Well, we literally used to come home with about 50 CDs and we'd just put them in our car during the break in the parking lot and then go back and get an armload more. People just love to do that. But I think now more people are doing streaming and saying, I'm on Spotify or whatever. And there again, it's really good to have business cards. And I'm not even kidding you. It's kind of an old school thing, but it's still kind of the way it is. Or
the business card with the QR code, they scan it, take it with their phone, take a picture, and it pulls up a SoundCloud link or something, a disco, whatever. Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Exactly. But you might forget about it later. Whereas the card, I come home and I have a stack of cards and I'll actually go through and say, this one, we'll listen to everyone's music because, I owe them that courtesy.
I think that people sometimes continue to bring CDs to the taxi rally because there are mentor sessions where an attendee can play the music for somebody. And I don't know if it's been a while. It's been a few years since they've had an in-person one. But last I heard, they were still having, there were CD players available. And of course, you can bring a flash drive or a link. Then, of course, you're subject to the Wi-Fi.
At a convention center.
Just have some way to have your music played.
Yeah, we had that a couple of times. We brought in, and the Wi-Fi went down in the hotel, and then it was kind
Bluetooth
of frustrating.
Speaker,
so maybe that's a backup.
And here we go.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I see pop up quite a lot at 52Qs, and whether this is PMA or whether this is Taxi Road Rally, is should I come with a full album, and if it needs to be a full album, or if not, do I need to bring a bunch of unsigned, unpublished music?
Interesting that comes up a lot because it's both is great. I think what people in the industry want to see is that we're all productive, and we're not one song wonders and one production wonders. We can do it again and again, and that we get it and that we understand that polished, and the song has to be mixed and everything. So it's good to have both, I would say.
Certainly, whenever you play your song for somebody, it's very important to make it clear that this music is signed already or it's unavailable, but I can create more like this. Or saying this is ready to go. It's not signed anywhere. If you're interested in it, let me know. But you can definitely let them know. But yeah, you need to have something for them to, whoever it is you're talking to get an idea of where you are musically.
Yeah, that's a really good point, though, because I think if it's polished and it's signed, that's kind of catnip for them. It's like, oh, wow, you are successful. Even if you haven't gotten one placement, it just kind of sounds cool. So, not that you should lie about that or anything, but if you are in fact signed and you have a complete project, that's pretty cool. That shows that you're getting some success.
There is some. I have a theory, just one of my theories, that there are times when nobody wants to be first to give you an opportunity. And then once you've got an opportunity and you've gotten signed, then the other stuff that they've rejected in the past, suddenly they want to sign that now. Because I think no one wants to be the first in some cases. I mean, there are obviously exceptions to that, but we found that to be true.
Yeah, that's it. That's true in everything with book authors and everything. It's just so hard to get that first success. And
now, one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you on the 52 Qs podcast is sitting right behind you, knowing that you have a background in music education, just like me. So I feel like, and you're, a husband and wife couple. I don't know. I feel like a kindred. I feel like, we're like quantum professionals, just on opposite sides of the country. But your book, Hey, that's my song. First of all, it's available everywhere, right? It's available for like Kindle. I have the Kindle version right here. It's available wherever your fine books are sold and procured. But let's talk about the book. Let's talk about why you wrote the book and your experience in it and how people can get the most out of Hey, that's my song.
Well, the title was inspired because literally when we started getting placements, we would hear a song on a talk show or something. Wait, is that our song? That's our song. So we actually say, hey, that's our song. So it's a little different, but it is a phenomenon. And I think a lot of us say that when it happens. If not, and it hasn't happened to you, it will. And it's a thrill. One of our first placements was in a feature film, and sitting in the movie theater and thinking it's our carousel song coming up, and not sure, but then it came and rolled on the credits, and we got a credit, which is really unusual. And that's when we were crying.
You know that scene in that thing you do where they hear their song on the radio. I've had that myself. My first placement was on the Masters tournament, and I jump up and down and I called my wife, Shannon, here it is. And I've been watching sports, football, whatever, watching TV and watching it as an observer and then hearing your music. And I've absolutely had that. And I feel like the moment you take that for granted is the moment that you've really lost your edge, because for all the placements I've had, that never gets old. That never gets old.
Well, what's cool is the surprise element of it, because a lot of people don't realize that they think that, your music was used, you always know about it in advance. And, 99 times of 100, we don't know about it in advance. And so there's that surprise. I mean, the big surprise is when we actually get our BMI statement saying, oh, look, 3 months ago, we got a placement in this show. You should have watched it. But as far as why we wrote the book, I mean, it took us a long time to learn the stuff that we've learned. We still go to events to try and learn more because there are, certainly new advances technologically and a lot of different things on the business landscape. But we also realized that, when we wanted to learn about mixing, we had to go read a book or go to this workshop about mixing. And then, wait, we need to learn about how to network. We got to go someplace else. We need to how does publishing work? What are royalties? How does that work? We had to go someplace else. And I think a lot of the information in our book is available in several different places. We wanted to pull it all together into one place to make it easier and convenient for people to have access to the information.
It covers marketing. It covers the writing process, the marketing process, the business, resources. Yeah, I'm sorry, Tracey, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It is overwhelming to get into this business, and there's a lot you can learn and a lot of mistakes you can make. And we were trying to prevent people from doing some of the things that we didn't know about, like we had a friend early on who signed 300 Qs to a brand new library, and he's still trying to get them back 12 years later. And we kept saying, don't do that. So the book is a cautionary tale in some ways. It's inspiring in a lot of ways. And it's just basic facts in other ways, because you need to know this stuff. And a lot of us don't like dealing with the business part. It's not the fun, sexy part, but the writing usually is. The mixing can be fun, and the marketing can be fun. Like I said, we did not understand networking. That turned out to be one of our favorite things. And I think just listening in our book, we have quotes from a lot of different music industry professionals. That's a hint right there that maybe you can look them up and they might just hint be at the Taxi Rally or the PMC or many of the other events that we've gone to. And you might just hook up with these various people and be on the road to success with their help. It's not a lone wolf kind of profession. You really do need to work with people.
And what some people don't realize is that when you go to the PMC, when you go to the Taxi Rally, or any of the other dozens of events that are out there, there are people that are up there on stage sharing their knowledge with you. And in most cases, they don't get paid. Sometimes they get a free lunch. Sometimes they didn't get that. And I've always just wondered, well, why are they there? And we'll talk to them, and they'll say, well, they want to get the information out. There's an educator brain that some of us have, that the information we have, we want to give to other people. And just realizing that most of what we have learned has been from people in that situation. We just thought, well, we should in turn pay it forward and pass this information on to other people. I mean, there are some people that think that, if you write a book, you're going to make a bunch of money. And so far that has not happened. It's not something we did to make a bunch of money. But honestly, we may have been better off money-wise.
Right, spending all that time actually making music.
Yeah, we really, seriously, we could have written about at least 200 cues in 2 years, and that's how long it took us to write the book. But we really felt not only were we writing it for fellow composers and songwriters who were getting started and just don't even understand the basics, but we're also writing it for our publishing friends and our PRO friends and our friends who are music attorneys, and they're just going, I don't have time to explain all this stuff to a newbie or even an established person. We know people who are hit songwriters and they have no idea how the sync world works. And they said, I'll buy your book when it comes out. And they did. And they are hit songwriters. So it's more of a giving back, as Vance said, just to get the word out there about some of the pitfalls, but some of the cool things.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about the book is it's not just instrumental music, but also covers songwriting. Now, at 52 Cues, we are pretty firmly in the instrumental cue territory, but the book covers that. But if you are a lyricist, if you are a songwriter, then hey, that's my song. I think it's a good fit. It's a good fit for anybody looking to get into music placement. It's not so focused on one or the other where you can't get something out of it. Well, Tracey and Vance, thank you so much for joining me. And how can people get their hands on the book, and how can people learn more about you?
Well, we have a website, and it's heythat'smysong.com. So it's very convenient. But the book is available through all major booksellers like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course, and at your local bookstore even. We happened to find it in a couple of bookstores in LA and in San Diego. It was next to it was like, that's my book. And it was actually before Sir Paul McCartney's book, which was really funny to see a Marino book.
Yes, we're before Paul McCartney alphabetically.
Yes, only.
But the spines are touching. The spines are touching.
But it was such a thrill.
Exactly. That's fantastic.
So it was quite a thrill.
Yeah, and there's a contact page on our
excellent.
website.
And we will have all those links in the description and in the show notes. Tracey and Vance, I wish you all the best, and congratulations on your book. I know I have it, and happily bought it for my Kindle, and I look forward to really meeting you in person coming up in September.
Oh, likewise, Dave. We look forward to meeting you too and having that cup of coffee at the 100%. PMC. And thanks for having us on. And I hope you and Shannon can get your mojo with creating. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. Good luck with that. Like I said, 52 Cues has been one of the first things that we've really hit our stride with creatively, because we, like I said at the beginning, we each picked our lane. And so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Like I said, we'll have all those links, so be sure to check those out on the other side.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Qs community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
That was Daiquiri and Filberts by 52 Qs community member Ed Smaron. Thank you so much for sending this along, Ed. This was submitted during our week 34 weekly feedback thread over at 52qs.com. And I really enjoyed this as, my master's is in jazz. And so this is the type of music I really love playing. It's the type of music I enjoy listening to. And one of my earliest influences that I can remember as far as jazz goes is Esquivel, which is a composer, jazz composer, kind of avant-garde, got into like electronic music, but not like EDM, early electronic, and this kind of zoo, 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 this type of vocal lounge type of music. And I really enjoy it. And so I wanted to feature Ed's cue for a couple of reasons. First of all, we don't get a ton of jazz coming through, and I'm happy to feature those. And also, as virtual instrument composers, it's something that we often wrestle with, and that is making MIDI instruments sound as realistic as possible. And so, if there was the first takeaway that I have from this for you, Ed, is that you have pushed some of these virtual instruments, I think, about as far as they will go, but the seams are still kind of showing a little bit. And this is just a challenge. We all struggle with it. So coming out of the gate, first of all, The vibe of this is fantastic. I love the title, Daiquiris and Filbert. Filberts, really nice. But the vocalese, the are really, really good. But like with most virtual instruments, the transition between notes can sound, well, it can betray the artifice of it all, or betray the reality and kind of show you the artifice. Like those little things that vocally we can do really simply, but is such a challenge to pull off. Same with the guitar. The guitar part feels a little MIDI-y, and so yeah. What's the solution? Well, I mean, the nuclear solution would be to find a singer and have them sing on it. Of course, many times that's not possible, but I'm not sure. If you can't find a singer, I always make sure that I don't put things in my cues that betray the reality of what I'm trying to accomplish. And it might mean changing some of your melodic choices, some of your rhythmic choices, because it's the rhythm that really kind of betrays it. Now, the piano sounds really, really good. The drums sound really, really good. And so you can either, with a vocal thing, either bring in a vocalist, change your melody, or I guess this would be the nuclear option, is to push completely into, I know this is artificial territory, and make it either sound sampled or something like that. But I don't think that's the vibe we're going for. I mean, we're really looking for a live performance. We want this to sound like a live performance. The flute sounds pretty good because the legato transitions between flute notes really they've come a pretty long way, and so those work okay. The kick drum feels a little. Now, I don't know if it's the low end of the bass and the kick need to kind of be reconciled. It feels like the low end is a little wumpy and hitting a little bit of a compression. The drum sound may be a little overly compressed. I like that vibraphone. Also, watch some of your velocities. They feel like with the piano hits and the vibraphone, I think we could do a little bit more to shape those velocities so it doesn't come across quite so gunshotty. And I can tell that they're not all like pinned at 127, so we're doing okay there. But I think we could probably exaggerate the velocities, the low to the high, so that it feels really, really, really shaped and contoured. Like I said, it's not. I can tell it's not all one velocity. And also the reverb feels a little wet, like everything's a little wet. And coming out of that breakdown, I would do the pickup note like we have at the beginning. I'm trying to find the note. Trying to find that little hook. Yeah, I would hit that. So going back. Yeah, hit the piano note once and then do the full hook. Because the way it sounds right now, it sounds like your vocalist missed their entrance. stab. Probably pull down the strings. I like them. I like those Lawrence Welky type strings in the background. And I think you could probably bring out the piano a little bit more in that kind of leave the piano a solo, right? And have this be a little bit of a piano feature. I like the simplicity of the notes you have. It's not too busy. It's not, super improv-y sounding. But I think we can. I don't know. We can let the piano player. We can give the piano player some. But what you have going for you, the vibe of this is stellar. The hook is fantastic. The harmonic choices are so on point. And you've done a really, really good job of evoking this Esquivel, zoo kind of vibe to it. And I love it. The hook is great. And I think you've done an absolutely stellar job, and I appreciate this. I appreciate you sending that along. As I said, this cue was sent along during our recent weekly feedback thread over at 52 Cues. And if this is something that you're interested in, because it is something that we do every single week, then head over to 52cues.com and join us. And if you found this feedback helpful and you'd like to get personal, in-depth video critiques of your own cues, where I'll break down things like form, structure, harmony, mix, and a lot more, then head over to 52cues.com/coaching. And while you're there, you can check out my other coaching services. I do one-on-one Zoom sessions, and we have quarterly mastermind groups where we can work together towards your own career goals in production music. So once again, I want to give a huge shout out to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the lights on here, and really sincerely appreciate you. But that's going to do it for me today. Be sure to tune in next week, where we're going to unpack some of the sobering truths about a career in production music. We've spent the last few weeks really talking about the exciting aspects, how you start the career in production music, but maybe there's a little bit of a dark side. What are some of the downsides that you probably need to be prepared for when you are entering into the production music industry? So I hope you had a stellar week. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. And I know and I believe that the universe has amazing plans for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52 Cues community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.